Hello everyone, this is Laura Smith on Spreaker. Glad to be here. And that's a song called Promises by Warren Hill. Good tune. Glad to be here. I just haven't done a show for a while. I've been doing a lot of shows over on Blog Talk Radio, and just thought I'd do a show tonight just talking about turning a blind eye regarding, abuse. That's what I'm talking about. And so, especially child abuse is kind of, children can't protect themselves, and they really need everybody looking in and everybody watching out for them, you know what I mean? Right now, people are turning a blind eye. I mean, people in families are turning a blind eye, neighbors are turning a blind eye, teachers are turning a blind eye. Just about anywhere where children are, people are turning a blind eye when it comes to children being abused. That's why it's happening, right? And that's why it's not being stopped, and that's why children are dying. And it's or if they're not dying, they're in the hospital due to the abuse, right? So it's a horrific thing. And I was just sitting back thinking tonight, a little bit about some things that flash through my mind once in a while, and not even so much flashbacks, but just memories and whatnot, and thinking about my family and stuff. I came from a large family. I'm the last of 7 children, and my parents were brought up on child abuse charges, and it was no, secret that my parents were abusing each other and their children. But people just turned a blind eye. There was once in a while somebody would step in, and I was thinking tonight about this particular time that my sister, who was 5 years older than me, she was, she would have been 14 at the time, and she sliced her eye on a barbed wire fence. She was going, I guess, crossing under it or going over it or whatever, but a piece of barbed wire was sticking up, and she didn't see it or something, and ran right into it, and it sliced her eye. And her eye was like bleeding, and blood was gushing out. And she was panicking and freaking out, and she came to show my mom, because my mom was home and in the kitchen, and my mom wasn't going to do anything to help her. Like, my mom was like, well, what do you want me to do about it? That's my mom's favorite thing to say. And she wasn't going to get her to a doctor. She wasn't going to get her to the hospital. She was just going to allow my sister's eye to continue to bleed and become infected or lose her eyesight or whatever, right? And a neighbor actually had come over. I don't know, this neighbor that lived down the road she was kind of funny. She lived on our street, and she used to go visiting all the neighbors. She was quite an elderly lady, really, but she was really in good shape for her age, and she was always running around, busybodying and nosing around into the neighbor's business, and sometimes it was welcomed and sometimes it wasn't. She was kind of nosy, but in this circumstance, it was great, because what she did was she came over and she saw my sister's eye, and she was a nurse. She had been a nurse in previous years and was retired, and she was like, you have to have your daughter taken to the doctor, or you have to take her, you have to send her to the hospital, something. Like, you can't leave her eye to be sliced open like that. And my mom was like, no, we're just going to leave it. And she's like, my mom was kind of angry at this woman for butting in, figuring that it wasn't her business, right? And this lady was like, no, if you don't take her, I'm going to take her, and I'm going to file charges against you for not doing the right thing for your daughter. Like, you have to take her in. So this is the kind of stuff that abuser parents and abuser people do to children. They don't get them help when they need it. If they're not abusing them and the child gets hurt some other way, they still don't get help for that child. Like, they have no interest in that child except for their own selfish needs, right? And so, that woman didn't turn a blind eye, but so many other times people did turn a blind eye. And I just, it's really unfortunate that this happens, because so many children today and tomorrow and the next day are going to die because people will turn a blind eye. Neighbors next door, they may hear, abusive stuff going on next door, but don't want to get involved because they think, oh, well, it's not our place, it's not our business, right? And what if the child's not being abused, and then we go and we make a report and they remove the child from a perfectly good home and this kind of stuff, right? It's always, that's the thoughts that go through people's minds. And the thing is it's better to report it. If it's not true, then the child will remain in the home. If it is true and the child is being abused, then you could save a child's life. And you may be the only person that reports that, you know. And it's kind of sad, but it's true. Um, it's really sad. It really is that people don't care because it's all such personal stuff, you know. Like, people don't care. Like, I remember that, and this is just something that goes through my mind all the time, because my dad, and I wrote about this in my book, A Life of Death, The Redemption, because I really wanted people to know, like, this kind of stuff happens in families, and whether people want to believe it or not, it's true, right? And it's sad. I mean, I knew lots of dysfunctional, abusive families and growing up, and ours was just one of them. And my dad was always attacking my mother in every way, physically, emotionally, psychologically, verbally, in every way. He was just always attacking her. And she had had surgery, major surgery. She almost died in the hospital, and when I was 9, we had to go and say goodbye to her because the doctors told us that she may not recover from the surgery that she was going to have, and that she might not recover, so we better go say goodbye just in case. So we all went down to the hospital, well, the ones that were around, my sister, myself, my dad. I guess my dad drove us down there, I'm sure he did. And we said goodbye to my mom just in case, right? Well, she survived. She made it, barely. And they sent her home from the hospital too soon, of course, because my parents didn't have any money and no insurance. This is back in the 70s, and, like, you know, I mean, we were kind of poor. I wouldn't say we were like dirt poor, but we were poverty level. And so, but not enough to get social assistance. Like, my parents couldn't get on welfare because I think my dad made $10 too much, or it was something ridiculous like that. But that's the truth. And so the hospital just sent my mom home to heal at home, right? And they really didn't keep her in there long enough, but she had this major surgery in her. She was sliced open from her breastbone all the way down to her privates, and they had to repair a whole bunch of damage inside. And she was a mess from just having this, first of all, having 10 children. 3 died stillborn. 7 of us lived, and the other 3 died. But there were 10 children born, and who knows how many miscarriages. My mother was always pregnant, and she was very ill as a young person when she was in her 20s, but she was abused by her mother, by physically, I mean, horrifically, horsewhipped and treated horrifically by her mother, my grandmother. And so she was a mess her whole life. She was always hemorrhaging, and horrible things would happen to her. And so she was in bed trying to recover from this surgery, and the doctors actually told my sister, who was 5 years older than me, and myself, to try to help her as much as possible, and also to clean her wound, because she had this huge slice down her whole middle of her body, right, all the way down her stomach, and just everything. And they had buttoned it because they couldn't sew it because she had too much scar tissue, so they had to button it. So she had buttons holding herself together. It was just absolutely horrific. But anyway, my dad was bugging her one night, and my mother was like yelling for him to leave the room. And she was like getting really upset, and I kind of figured that she would just die if she got too sick or too emotional or too uptight, because she was really, really sick. And she was pleading with him to leave her alone. And I thought, oh, he's going to go in there, he's going to try to, like, my first thing that came to my mind was that my dad was going to rape my mother, because that's what he was always doing. So I thought he was going to try to rape her in that condition, and I was just pissed off. And I was 9 years old, so I grabbed my big old pink jumbo plastic bat, and I went in behind him into my mother's room, and my dad was facing her, so he didn't see me coming up behind him, and I screamed at him, and I smacked him in the head with this bat, and knocked his glasses off. And I mean, of course, I paid for that, right? I mean, I got shaken like a rag doll and thrown against the wall across the room, and damaged my neck and my back, and screwed me up. But he came over and started kicking me, and I was actually sort of passed out because I was seeing stars and stuff. But I told, after that, that summer, I was going on a trip with this friends of the family, and which, believe it or not, my parents had lots of friends. They were taking me to, and their younger daughter, who was a little bit younger than me, but we used to pal around. We were friends, to see her grandmother. So, to Kansas, right? So we were going on this trip, and they were asking questions about how things were at home at my house. And they said, how are things at home, and how's your mom, and do your mom and dad still fight a lot, and what's been happening. And I told them, I said, yeah, it's pretty bad. And like I took a bat to my dad's head and smacked him in the head with it, but my pink jumbo plastic bat. But the thing is it wouldn't have mattered whether it was wood or plastic. It was the closest thing I could find to grab. And I thought about that years later. I thought, I wonder if it had been made out of like an aluminum bat or a wooden bat, would I still have used it? And the answer is yes. Because I was literally trying to save my mom's life. My mom was my main abuser, but I could see what he was doing was wrong, And in my mind, I thought he was going to attack her or rape her while she was recovering from this surgery. So I didn't care. I just smacked him in the head with this bat. And so I told these people that and what had happened. And they were like, really? And they were shocked, and they were like wanting to know a little bit more. And what did he do to you? And so I told them, and that was it. No help, like no help. It was just all overlooked. It was all overlooked by neighbors, by my older sister, who was abused just the same as I was. And my mother beat on her, my dad beat on her and abused her too. She was my oldest sister, not the one that's 5 years older than me, but the oldest one in the family, who's now passed on. And she knew what I was growing up in because she grew up in it, and she probably figured, well, I grew up in it, so you're going to grow up in it. Did she ever... Well, I wouldn't have wanted to go into her home anyway, because she didn't treat her own children very well. But the thing is she didn't even offer. She didn't even care, I mean, even within families, older siblings, older relatives, aunts, uncles, nobody cares. Nobody cares that these children are being abused and beaten and trashed and sexually abused, or whatever type of abuse is going on. Nobody cares. Nobody cares that the parents are fighting and trashing the house, beating on each other, breaking furniture, and, threatening to kill each other and the family, on a regular basis, pretty much every Sunday. And nobody cares. No, they don't. Because you know what? This is going on right today. This is going on right now. In this ill kind of sickness of a life that I led, and I was forced to live until I, was an adult and could actually look after myself. It was ridiculous. I saw so much violence, and I saw so much violence of people towards other people, in other people's lives. I mean, not just my own family. I just grew up in violence. I grew up around it. People I hung out with were violent. Their families were violent. I mean, I did know some normal people, which I would consider normal, decent people that solve their problems differently. That don't lash out and don't use physical violence to solve things. Right. I mean, I saw some families that were just normal, everyday families, having normal everyday lives, and working things out when there's problems instead of abuse arising, right? So I saw that, but I didn't live it, And then, even in my own world, in my 20s, hanging around with people, these friends of mine who really I consider to be family to me, because these friends of mine that I was hanging around with as a young teen, 16, 17, I mean, especially 15, 16, 17, where my home life was still so ridiculous and I was old enough to get out of the house, I mean, I could have just ran away. My parents wouldn't have said anything. They would have been like, okay, bye, good riddance, like they didn't care if I came home or not. And so these people would let me stay at their house, and I would sleep on their couches and stay over, and they'd feed me, and do my clothes. They would wash my clothes. They would like lend me clothes so that I could wash my other clothes. Like, these people's families were really cool and very nice and very helpful, and realized what was going on. And some of them actually wanted to intervene, and I was like adamant and put my foot down and said no, because I was so used to living like that. So sometimes people do look in, and sometimes people don't turn a blind eye, but then things don't happen anyway, By then it was too late. I figured, hey, if I go into a foster home, I'm going to be just set up for another, because my behavior was so screwed up that I would have been set up for abuse in a foster home too, because I could not behave properly. I was not shown how to behave properly. I was shown how to act like my parents. That's how I was taught and raised, is that when you want something, you become violent, you make threats, you act crazy, and you might get somewhere. My brother, I remember one time I was thinking about this tonight too, because I was kind of thinking about my sister, that's why. The one that's 5 years older than me that sliced her eyeball. Well, she was, see how old would she have been? Probably 16, 17 years old. She had her first car, and she was still living at home. And my brother, who was 2 years older than her, he was so high on drugs that he wanted to go rob a pharmacy and get more drugs. Because he was a pill popper. He ended up killing himself. And he held a knife to my sister's throat for, it was probably close to an hour. I would say about, I was thinking one time it was about 20 minutes. I thought, no, it was longer than that. Because my sister is really, even today, so traumatized by that. Because he held a knife to her throat and he was going to kill her if she didn't drive him to this pharmacy to do this robbery, right? And my mom was in the house at the time. I don't know where my dad was, but my mom was home, and my mom was telling me to try to talk and I was 12, and she was trying to get me to talk my brother out of killing, to put the knife down. She's like, you talk to him, he'll listen to you, he won't listen to me. So here's my mother, who weighed about 300 pounds and could have took my brother on very quite easily. He was a big guy too, they were all 6 feet. But the thing is she could have taken him down. My mother was perfectly capable of handling things. She didn't want to deal with it, so she had me do it. So here I am talking to my brother, don't kill our sister. This is the insanity that my life was, right? This was a normal, probably a school night, and I'm supposed to be doing my homework, but instead of that, I got to talk my high brother down from killing my sister, right? And I'm like, don't kill her, we love our sister, and trying to reason with him, this guy who's so high on drugs that, he doesn't even know what he's doing, right? So anyway, he didn't put the knife down, and he made my sister drive him to do this drug robbery, which he got busted for, because my sister dropped him off and split, took off and came home. And we were all just kind of waiting to see what would happen, right? Would my brother come back with the drugs? Would he come back so high and then kill us? Or, who knows? But anyway, that was a normal night at our house, so it wasn't anything out of the normal, out of the extraordinary, right? So, my sister just dropped him off. So he ended up leaving his wallet at the scene, and the police came looking for him, and he had to leave the country at that point. So we had to he went to drug rehab first, and they said if he doesn't stay in drug rehab and he doesn't get cleaned up and straightened up, he's going to have to leave the country. And because the FBI was involved, and they were like, we're not putting up with this garbage anymore, he's going to have to go, right? So he went to this drug rehab thing for about 3 weeks and then ran off. And then he had to leave the country. So, but it was just a nightmare, absolute nightmare. And he wasn't holding a knife to my throat, but it was traumatizing for me to have to sit there and try to talk my brother out of down from killing my sister. It's like, but it was just the normal thing, so I put on some tears. I was like, I put on some tears because I thought, well, if I cry, maybe he'll feel sorry for me and he'll put the knife down. I was trying to use all these manipulative techniques to see if I could get him to put the knife down. I mean, that's ridiculous, you know what I mean? But this is how my life was. So later in life, when I was hanging around these people, these friends of mine who were really my best friends in the whole world, they were all abused too. And we were all doing drugs and really not doing all that well in life. And some of them had relationships, boyfriend, girlfriend type thing, moving in with each other and stuff, and their lives were so full of violence and so full of craziness that I was involved in that too. So in trying to save my best friend from being beaten by her boyfriend and having her head slammed into the tile wall, where her eyes were spinning back in her head and she was literally going to be killed, like I'd be beaten up by this guy. I mean, he'd like choke me, and he was threatening to kill me one time, literally, like with his hand around my throat, saying, "I'm gonna kill you. I could kill you right now." And I was like, "Go ahead, go ahead." I told him, "I'm already dead. You can't kill me. I'm already dead." I mean, we had piles of cocaine out on the table. I mean, it was insane. It was insane. This is the lifestyle that I knew. This is what I knew. This is how I lived. And then people in society look down on those who have been in hell, you know. And it's like I used to blame God, you know. I talk a whole lot about that on my shows on Blog Talk Radio. But I used to blame God, you know. And then I thought, whose fault is this? Whose fault was this? It was my parents' fault, you know, like it was their fault. And then I used to think, well, why didn't somebody step in? Why didn't somebody, you know, why was there no help and why was there no hope? And I started to think about it after years later as an older adult, you know, going through and thinking about things a little more logically, a little bit more sanely. You know, now, you know, I'm drug free. I don't do drugs, and I've been off drugs since about the age of 22. 23 pretty much is about the age that I was completely drug free. And I don't do drugs, you know. I don't drink. You know, my big uh, addiction is cigarettes, you know, because I haven't been able to let those go. But you know, I don't use drugs anymore, and I'm happy to be able to say, you know, I'm clean and I'm drug free, because I didn't want to end up in the gutter and dead somewhere, drug overdose. A lot of my friends are dead from drug overdose. One of my brothers is dead from a drug overdose. One of my brothers killed himself. The one who sexually abused me killed himself, hung himself. So, you know, he was a cocaine addict, and he was psychologically screwed and evil as well. And so, you know, you just sit there and you think, you know, whose fault was this? You know, and I sit there, and who can you blame but the two people that were responsible for setting that mess up and making us live in it, you know? I mean, my mom had no intentions of helping anybody, and she didn't want to see her son go to jail, and so of course she's not going to call the cops for him, you know, or get him a counselor because he held a knife to her daughter's throat, you know, because she cared about her son more than she cared about her daughter. My mom loved her boys. That's all there was to it. And she did not love her girls, right? And so, you know, it's tough, you know, to know that so many people know what's going on in a family, and yet nothing's done. I mean, social services were involved in our family. I mean, they used to come around, and with their little clipboards, this man and woman used to come, and they used to come to the house on a regular basis, and they used to check me, and I'd have to take off my clothes in a supervised way, so they could check for bruises and signs of abuse, right? And they were around for a while, and then they were gone, and then it all started again. You know, I mean, so even when there is an intervention done, a lot of times, I mean, you see what's going on here out here in the headlines. Even with interventions, does it change anything? No, because the abusers don't change. Unless the abusers are, I mean, I call them abusers because that's what they are. Unless these people, these abusive monsters, want to change, they're not going to change. And my parents had no intentions on changing. None whatsoever. They wanted to hate each other. And they wanted to hate their children. And they wanted to hurt each other. And they wanted to hurt us. And that's what they did. You know? So, you know, I mean, it's absolutely inexcusable what people do to children. And there's no excuse for it. There's no excuse for it. And the blame should go where it goes. You know, and a lot of people like to blame the system. I don't blame the system. You know who I blame? The people that are guilty of picking up whatever implement it is and bashing their child in the head. The people that are sexually using children, those are the guilty people. Right? It's like, okay, we want to blame the system, we want to blame somebody else, but the guilty people are the people that are doing the crime. Right? And so child abuse is a crime. I hope everybody knows that. And there's a real difference between discipline and child abuse. And you know, you talk to a survivor who's been abused, we can certainly tell you that there's a real difference between discipline and abuse. There's a real difference between a spanking and a beating, right? My mother, I mean, I got a few spankings in my lifetime, which did not bother me at all, because I was acting out of line. I needed a spanking, that's fine, whatever. It didn't hurt, it didn't cause me any pain. It was just a minor wake-up call, like, hello, wake up, you know, you're misbehaving. That's fine. That didn't mean absolutely no damage whatsoever. But I'll tell you what damaged me. You know, rolling pin that bashed my head in. My mother took a rolling pin and beat the shit out of me with it, and busted my head open, and then kicked the crap out of me, spit in my face, called me names, threw me out of the house. You know, I mean, I was 13 years old. It's like, yeah, okay, that did some real damage. And, you know, it's like when I was really little, you know, like 6, 7 years old, like my mother wouldn't spank you. Like she would beat you to a pulp, you know? I mean, we're talking abuse, right? And my dad, when he would discipline, quote unquote, my brothers, he would go in and kick them and stomp on them. He would literally just batter them down. That's why my parents were brought up on child abuse charges, right? There's a real difference between discipline and abuse, right? And so many people just don't want to get involved. Oh, it's not our business. Besides, we like the parents, you know, even though they're abusing those children, you know. They come to the barbecues in the summertime. Who's going to bring the potato salad, you know, if they go to jail, you know? It's like, no, they don't care about the kids because they have no relationship with them. So there's a lot of people that will turn a blind eye. And there's people, you know, there's people sitting right next to us at work. There's people in our churches. There's people sitting right next to us in our apartment buildings that are being abused, have been abused. You know, it's awful, and people will turn a blind eye. You know, and who's going to help? Nobody. Not if we don't. You know, so. Report child abuse as a crime to the police. Make a report to the police first of all, and then contact the other authorities. Right? It's a crime, right? And if you're being abused, make sure that you get some help, because there is no excuse for abuse, and no one deserves to be abused. Right? So we'll talk to you all again real soon, and take good care of yourselves. I got another song here I want to play. This is Against the World by Vital, Vitalmc. This is an awesome tune. Take good care, everybody.
It's amazing the ways you got me blazing these trails, the ways you taking me through when I was afraid of myself, to show me what I ain't seen and tell me what I ain't heard. You put your hooks inside of me, so honestly I can't work, cause I don't hide no more, and now I know that I can be the man that I planned. You said you found who I am and fell in love with me, the part of my life that I was once missing, and now I see you clearly, feeling you wondrously. No true with 2 times, it's like an empty hourglass, pissing against the grain, the twisted sigma systems coward ass. Whatever they deem is normal, come from, we'll just go around hand in hand, and if I get too crazy, baby, hold me down, hold me close, hold me tight, and don't let go of me, because I love to feel the motion of your body's poetry and rhythmic excellence. Synchronize the breath, we spend the best of many nights sweating, bless us, set the precedence. Now
doesn't matter what they want, doesn't matter what they need.
It doesn't matter what they say to me, because our eyes is open to what they afraid to see. Yeah.
Doesn't matter if we cry, don't matter if we.
It doesn't matter if we find it we fall, because it's you and me, baby, us against them all. And if we hold on, even at the phone gone, it'll never be the same old song. Know that. And if we keep it cool, together we'll see it through until the end, cause we believe in me and you. And that's why there are times where we can't stand each other's guts, arguments ringing out until we feel our numbers up once the thunder struck. But when you get down to the root of it, moments like that can't compare to the true feelings and the end of being destined deep and down to fight for it. So all they go with anger if you let go of your pride of it. And ain't facetious if you believe this, baby, you and me, you prestigious and league with the universe's blessings calling out to give us all that we can hold on. The night before dawn, I'm willing to spill my blood and be a martyr for your honor. If they down to go to war and fight for everything my heart can live for. Yeah, so show me first and don't tell, cause the action speaks louder when it's more than yourself. And that to sacrifice 2 souls equal on the middle ground, and I'ma be there through thick and thin. I plan to stick around.
Doesn't matter what they want, doesn't matter what they need.
It doesn't matter what they say to me, because our eyes is open to what they afraid to see. Yeah.